August 12, 1962. Sam Giancana's men had been inside Marilyn Monroe's bedroom for 3 hours. They planted the bug in the headboard while she was at the studio. The reel-to-reel recorder sat ready in a van parked 2 blocks down 5th Helena Drive. At 11:47 p.m., a black Lincoln pulled into her driveway. The President of the United States stepped out alone. No Secret Service, no protection detail. The recording equipment started turning. Giancana's men expected to hear an affair. Instead, they heard something that would shake the foundations of American power. Through the static, John Kennedy's voice came through the speakers, broken, terrified, telling Marilyn Monroe that his own government was about to kill him. What did Kennedy know that was so dangerous the CIA would murder a sitting president? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 weeks earlier, Sam Giancana sat in his corner booth at the Armory Lounge on West Roosevelt Road. The leather-bound phone book lay open before him, pages filled with numbers that could move mountains. Judges, aldermen, union bosses, police captains. Each contact represented decades of careful cultivation, favors given and received, the delicate architecture of power that made Chicago run. But tonight, that power felt fragile. Giancana's fingers traced the gilt edges of the book. At 54, he had survived longer than most men in his position. The Chicago outfit controlled everything from the docks to the State House, but Bobby Kennedy was tearing it all down. Asset seizures, grand jury subpoenas, deportation orders. Boss. Johnny Rosselli slid into the opposite seat. His usually immaculate suit showed wrinkles. His hands shook slightly as he lit a cigarette. Giancana closed the phone book. Talk. The federal task force hit 3 more operations today. Trucking. Numbers. The laundry business on Taylor Street. Rosselli's voice carried exhaustion. They got ledgers, names, everything. Through the restaurant's windows, Giancana watched late-evening traffic crawl down Roosevelt. Normal people heading home to normal lives. He had built an empire by understanding that everyone wanted something. Money, protection, revenge. But Bobby Kennedy seemed to want nothing except their destruction. How much time do we have? Weeks, maybe days. Rosselli leaned forward. Bobby's moving fast. Grand jury convenes Monday. If they get indictments. Giancana understood. Federal prison would mean death, not from the guards or other inmates, but from his own people. A boss who could not protect his organization was already dead. The phone book represented 30 years of building relationships. Sam Mooney Giancana had never asked for help from anyone. But desperation made men do things they swore they never would. What about the brothers? Rosselli's eyes darkened. Jack owes us. Bay of Pigs. The election. We delivered Illinois. They both knew the debt went deeper than politics. Judith Campbell had been more than a courier between the outfit and the White House. She had carried messages, money, and promises that bound the president to Chicago's underworld. But Bobby Kennedy seemed immune to his brother's obligations. Jack can't control his own brother. Then maybe we need different leverage. Giancana picked up his glass of wine. The Chianti was from his own vineyard in California, bottled with grapes he had planted with his own hands during the war years when federal heat had forced him west. Building something legitimate while maintaining something dangerous. What kind of leverage? The kind that makes powerful men remember they're human. Across town, Marilyn Monroe sat in the master bedroom of her Brentwood home, staring at the bottle of Nembutal in her palm. 12 pills. The doctor said no more than 2, but sleep would not come without help, and lately, even help was not enough. The house felt too big, too quiet, too empty. At 36, she had everything the world said mattered: fame, money, beauty that moved armies and toppled governments. But the pills were the only things that silenced the voice in her head telling her she was still Norma Jean Baker from the foster homes, still the girl nobody wanted. The phone rang. She stared at it for 6 rings before answering. Marilyn? The voice was warm, familiar, dangerous. You shouldn't call here. I needed to hear your voice. She closed her eyes. Bobby Kennedy had that effect on her, made her feel like the woman she had always wanted to be instead of the image everyone else demanded. Your brother was here last week. Silence on the other end. Bobby knew about Jack's visits, the pills, the loneliness that made her reach for anyone who offered warmth. But knowledge and acceptance were different things. Marilyn, we talked about this. I know what we talked about. Her voice hardened. But talking and living are different things. She hung up before he could respond. Outside her bedroom window, Los Angeles sprawled like a circuit board, millions of lights marking millions of lives. Each light represented someone with their own secrets, their own fears, their own pills to help them sleep. But none of those people had her problem. None of them knew things that could destroy presidencies. In Washington, Bobby Kennedy stood in his Justice Department office, staring at surveillance photographs spread across his desk. Sam Giancana entering a restaurant. Giancana meeting with union officials. Giancana shaking hands with judges. Each photograph represented a nail in the outfit's coffin. Bobby had spent 2 years building this case, following money trails through shell companies and offshore accounts, turning witnesses who thought loyalty was a suicide pact. But tonight, the photographs felt like accusations. His secretary knocked. "Mr. Kennedy, your wife called. Dinner is ready. Tell her I'll be late." Bobby gathered the photographs into a manila folder. Somewhere in these images was the thread that would unravel organized crime in America. But pulling that thread might unravel other things as well. His brother's presidency depended on secrets staying secret, favors staying unpaid, debts staying uncollected. The phone rang again. "Bobby Kennedy, we need to talk." Jack's voice carried strain. Now, 20 minutes later, Bobby sat in the Oval Office while the president paced behind the resolute desk. Jack looked older than his 45 years. The weight of leadership had carved lines around his eyes, turned his hair gray at the temples. "You have to slow down." Bobby leaned forward. "Jack, we're close. Giancana, Trafficante, the whole organization. I understand that. But there are considerations." "What considerations?" Jack stopped pacing. For a moment, neither brother spoke. The Oval Office held secrets that would outlive both men. But some secrets were too dangerous even for presidents to carry alone. There are things you don't know. Operations, commitments. What kind of commitments? Jack turned toward the windows facing the rose garden. Outside, Secret Service agents maintained their vigilant watch. But protection was an illusion when the real threats came from within the government itself, the kind that keep us all alive. Back in Chicago, Giancana made his decision. Johnny Rosselli sat across from him, waiting for orders that would change everything. Set it up. Which part? All of it. The girl, the recording, everything. Rosselli nodded slowly. When? Soon, before Bobby gets his indictments, before they shut us down. Giancana opened the phone book again. His finger traced down a page until it stopped at a number he had hoped never to use. A number that connected him to people who made the outfit look like choir boys. People who could plant a bug in anyone's bedroom. People who could make presidents disappear, make the call. 3 days later, technicians in unmarked coveralls entered Marilyn Monroe's house through the service entrance. The installation took 45 minutes. High-fidelity microphones, transmitters that could broadcast clear audio 3 blocks away. Equipment so sophisticated it made FBI surveillance look primitive. When they finished, 12,305 Fifth Helena Drive had become the most monitored private residence in America. None of them knew they had just created the stage for the most dangerous conversation in political history. The surveillance van sat dark on North Carolina Avenue, 2 blocks from Marilyn Monroe's house. Inside, 3 men hunched over recording equipment that would have impressed the CIA, reel-to-reel tape machines, signal amplifiers, headphones that could pick up whispered conversations through reinforced walls. Tony Accardo adjusted his headset. At 56, he was Giancana's most trusted technician. He had recorded judges taking bribes, politicians making deals, enemies confessing sins. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the kind of operation that changed history. "Signals clean," he whispered into his radio. In the Armory Lounge, Sam Giancana paced behind the bar. The restaurant had closed hours ago, but he could not sleep. Everything depended on the next few hours. If the president visited Marilyn tonight, if they recorded evidence of the affair, Bobby Kennedy would have no choice but to back down. But if Kennedy stayed away, "Boss," the radio crackled. "We got movement." Giancana grabbed the handset. "Talk to me." Black Lincoln. Government plates. No escort. Through the static, Giancana heard car doors slamming, footsteps on gravel, a front door opening and closing, then silence. In the surveillance van, Tony Accardo fine-tuned the recording levels. The microphones were sensitive enough to capture heartbeats, breathing, the rustle of clothing being removed. What they heard instead was weeping. "Jack, what's wrong?" Marilyn Monroe's voice came through the speakers clear as daylight, but the man's response was barely audible, broken, desperate. "They're going to kill me, Marilyn." Accardo frowned. He adjusted the gain, pushed the headphones tighter against his ears. Politicians said many things during intimate moments. Promises they could not keep, secrets they should not share. But this, who wants to kill you? My own government. In the van, 3 hardened criminals exchanged glances. They had expected to record pillow talk between lovers. Instead, they were hearing something that made their blood run cold. "Jack, you're scaring me." The president's voice grew stronger, more focused, as if sharing the secret gave him strength to speak it clearly. The Joint Chiefs, Lyman Lemnitzer, Curtis LeMay, they've been planning this since the Bay of Pigs. Planning what? Operation Northwoods. Accardo grabbed a notepad, started writing. Whatever this was, Giancana would want every detail. They want to stage attacks on American cities, kill American citizens, blame it on Castro to justify a nuclear first strike. Marilyn's gasp came through the speakers like a physical blow. "My God, Jack, stop them, I can't." The president's voice broke again. "I tried. I fired Lemnitzer. I've been fighting them for months, but they're not listening to me anymore." "Then tell the world. Hold a press conference. With what proof? They're the ones who control the evidence. The briefings, the intelligence reports. On the surveillance tapes they could hear movement, footsteps crossing the room, the clink of glass against glass. They're going to kill me first, make it look like an accident, or an assassination by a communist sympathizer. Then they'll have their war." Accardo's hand shook as he wrote. This was not blackmail material. This was a confession that could start a revolution or end a democracy. When? Soon. Maybe Dallas. They're already changing my security protocols, reducing the detail, altering routes. In the Armory Lounge, Giancana stared at the radio in disbelief. He had wanted evidence of an affair. Instead, he was hearing evidence of treason at the highest levels of government. "What about Bobby? Bobby doesn't know. If I tell him, they'll kill him too. They might kill him anyway. Then we have to run, leave the country. Where would we go? These people have reach everywhere. Besides, if I run, they'll just accelerate their timeline. More Americans will die." The recording equipment captured every word with perfect clarity. The most powerful man in the world admitting he was powerless. A president explaining why he was already dead. "There has to be something you can do. Maybe if I can expose them publicly, force them into the light. But I need time to gather proof." "How much time?" "I don't know. Months, maybe weeks." In the surveillance van, Accardo made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He reached over and started a second tape machine. Whatever happened next, there needed to be multiple copies. "Marilyn, if something happens to me..." "Nothing's going to happen. Listen to me. If they kill me, you'll be in danger too. You know too much now. Then we'll both be careful. Promise me something. Anything. If I die, if this gets covered up, find someone to tell this story. A journalist, a politician they don't own. Someone who can make people understand what really happened." "Jack, you're talking like you're already dead." "Maybe I am. Maybe we all are." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes. Kennedy revealing details about military contractors who profited from war, intelligence agencies that had gone rogue, politicians who were secretly on foreign payrolls. Each revelation was worse than the last. Each confession confirmed that the United States government had been compromised at levels most Americans could never imagine. When Kennedy finally left at 2:17 a.m., the surveillance van sat in stunned silence. "Jesus Christ," one of the technicians whispered. "What do we do with this?" Accardo removed his headphones with shaking hands. In 30 years of criminal activity, he had never heard anything this dangerous. This was not evidence of corruption. This was evidence of a coup. "We call the boss." 20 minutes later, Sam Giancana sat in his office listening to the playback. His face remained expressionless, but his hands gripped the armrests of his chair until his knuckles turned white. When the tape ended, he sat in silence for a full minute. Make copies. Hide them. Different locations. How many? As many as we can. This changes everything. Rosselli leaned forward. Changes how? Giancana stood up and walked to his safe. Inside, beside stacks of cash and bearer bonds, sat a manila folder marked insurance policies. He had never imagined needing insurance against the United States government itself. We're not blackmailing the Kennedys anymore. We're protecting them. From who? From the same people who want to kill us all. Outside, Chicago slept peacefully. Citizens dreaming ordinary dreams, unaware that in a small office above an Italian restaurant, 3 men had just learned that their government was run by people willing to murder their own president to start a war. The recording would change everything. The question was whether anyone would live long enough to use it. The next morning, Sam Giancana sat in his kitchen drinking coffee that had grown cold hours ago. The recording played for the 4th time on a portable machine hidden inside a bread box. Each replay made the implications clearer and more terrifying. The President of the United States was marked for death by his own military. Across the table, Johnny Rosselli chain-smoked Marlboros and stared at a CIA routing slip that had arrived by courier 20 minutes earlier. The document bore official letterhead but no signature, no return address, just a few typed lines that made his blood freeze. Subject: Monroe, Marilyn. Classification: executive action. Authorization pending. Timeline: immediate. Rosselli had seen enough intelligence documents to understand the language. Executive action meant assassination. The CIA wanted Marilyn Monroe dead, and they wanted it to happen fast. How did they know? Giancana turned off the recording. They monitor everything. Phone calls, mail, bank accounts. They probably had their own surveillance on the house. But they don't know we recorded it. Maybe, maybe not. The routing slip represented a crossroads. For 40 years, the Chicago outfit had operated on the principle that information was power. Secrets could be bought, sold, traded like commodities. But this secret was different. This secret could get them all killed. What do? Giancana stood up and walked to his window. Outside, Elmwood Park looked like suburban America. Tree-lined streets, kids riding bicycles, fathers mowing lawns. None of them knew they lived in a country where the military planned to murder civilians to justify starting wars. We think carefully. In Brentwood, Marilyn Monroe stood in her shower letting hot water wash over her like absolution. But no amount of heat could cleanse the memory of last night's conversation. Jack's voice breaking as he described his own death. The terrible certainty that he was telling the truth. She had fallen in love with dangerous men before. DiMaggio's jealousy. Arthur Miller's intellectual arrogance. But Jack Kennedy's danger was different. It was not personal. It was historical. When she stepped out of the shower, her phone was ringing. "Hello? Marilyn, it's Pat." The president's sister sounded strained. "I'm having a small dinner party tonight. Jack thought you might like to come." "I don't think that's a good idea. Please, he needs to see you." Marilyn wrapped a towel around herself and sat on her bed. Patricia Kennedy Lawford was one of the few people in the family who knew about the relationship. She had arranged meetings, carried messages, kept secrets that could destroy her brother's presidency. "Pat, what Jack told me last night, I know. You know, I've known for months. Bobby suspects. Jackie pretends not to see. Not about us. About the other thing. Silence on the other end of the line. Pat, some things can't be discussed on the phone." Marilyn understood. If Jack was right about military surveillance, every word they spoke might be recorded, every meeting monitored, every relationship compromised. 7 o'clock. "Thank you." After hanging up, Marilyn walked to her dresser and opened the bottom drawer. Hidden beneath silk scarves and costume jewelry was a small leather diary. She had started keeping it after her divorce from Arthur Miller, when loneliness made her want to record thoughts she could share with no one else. Last night's entry filled 3 pages. Jack's warnings, his fears, his certainty that he was living on borrowed time. If something happened to him, if the story was covered up, the diary might be the only evidence that the truth had been spoken. But keeping the diary also made her a target. In Washington, Bobby Kennedy stood in his office studying surveillance photographs that had arrived from Chicago. The images showed Sam Giancana meeting with technicians, equipment being loaded into vans, money changing hands. What do we know about this? FBI Associate Director Cartha DeLoach spread additional photographs across the desk. Outfit surveillance operation. Target unknown. High-end equipment. Professional installation. Bobby frowned. Giancana was desperate, but he was not stupid. A major surveillance operation meant he had identified a target worth enormous risk. Ideas could be anyone: judge, politician, business rival. Bobby picked up one photograph showing electronic equipment being carried into an unmarked van. The technology looked military-grade, more sophisticated than anything the Bureau used for domestic surveillance. Where did they get this equipment? Unknown. But it required significant funding. And connections. What kind of connections? DeLoach hesitated. The kind that might involve people we can't touch. Bobby understood. For 2 years, he had been fighting organized crime while navigating a government filled with people who had their own relationships with the underworld. CIA operatives who used mob contacts for assassination attempts. Military contractors who laundered money through outfit businesses. Politicians who owed their careers to Chicago votes. Keep monitoring. But carefully. Sir? Very carefully. That evening, Marilyn Monroe drove through the gates of Patricia Lawford's Santa Monica home feeling like she was entering enemy territory. The house overlooked the Pacific Ocean, but tonight the view felt ominous rather than beautiful. Dark water stretching toward a dark horizon. Jack Kennedy stood on the terrace alone, looking older than his 45 years. When he saw her approaching, his face softened into the smile that had charmed a nation. "Thank you for coming. Are we safe here?" "Safer than most places. Pat swept the house this morning." Marilyn joined him at the terrace railing. Below them, waves crashed against the beach in endless rhythm. Normal sounds, natural sounds, nothing like the clicking of recording equipment or the whisper of surveillance. "I've been thinking about what you said. Don't think too much. It's dangerous. More dangerous than pretending it's not true?" Jack turned to face her. In the dim light, she could see fear in his eyes. Not the calculated concern of a politician, but the raw terror of a man who knew he was being hunted. "I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If something happens to me, don't try to investigate. Don't ask questions. Don't talk to reporters. Jack, promise me. These people will kill anyone who threatens their plans, anyone who knows too much." "Then why did you tell me?" "Because I needed someone to know the truth. Someone I trust. Someone who might survive long enough to tell the story someday." "What story?" "That there was a president who tried to stop a war, who tried to choose peace over profit, who died because he believed America was better than its worst impulses." They stood in silence watching the ocean. Somewhere beneath those waves lay the wreckage of ships destroyed by men who believed violence was the solution to every problem. Men who profited from death and called it patriotism. "How long do we have?" "Weeks, maybe days. They're already changing my schedule. Security protocols, staff assignments. Then we should spend the time we have. It's too dangerous. If they're watching me, they're watching you. Then let them watch. Let them see what they're destroying." Jack pulled her close. For a moment, they stood together against the wind and the darkness and the certainty that their time was ending. "I love you. I love you too." But love was not armor against bullets. Love could not stop conspiracies or change the course of history. Love could only make the ending hurt more. Back in Chicago, Sam Giancana made a phone call that would seal everyone's fate. "It's me. We need to meet. When? Now. And bring the insurance." The insurance was a briefcase containing photographs, documents, and recordings that could destroy half the politicians in Washington. Giancana had spent decades collecting leverage against people who might someday threaten his organization. But now he needed leverage against people who threatened the country itself. The meeting took place in a warehouse on the South Side. 3 men sitting in folding chairs beneath a single light bulb, deciding whether to save a president or let him die. The recording changes everything. How? Kennedy's not our enemy anymore. The people trying to kill him are. And if we protect him, then maybe we all live long enough to see whether America is worth saving. Outside the warehouse, Chicago slept peacefully. But inside, 3 criminals were making decisions that would determine whether the United States remained a democracy or became something else entirely. Something darker. Something that killed its own leaders to maintain power. The choice was simple. Save the president or watch their country burn. August 18, 1962. 6 days after the recording, Marilyn Monroe sat at her kitchen table writing in her diary by candlelight. The power had gone out twice that week. Phone calls disconnected mid-conversation. Strange cars parked on her street for hours before disappearing. She knew she was being watched. The diary entry from August 15th read, "Jack called today, but the line went dead after 10 seconds. Pat says he's been having meetings with military people all week. Something about Cuba. Something about October. I'm scared they're going to hurt him before he can stop them." Tonight's entry was shorter. I think they know that I know. Outside her bedroom window, a van with telephone company markings had been parked since noon. The same van that had been there yesterday and the day before. The workers inside never worked on any telephone lines. Marilyn closed the diary and hid it back in the dresser drawer. If they came for her tonight, at least there would be a record. Someone, someday, might understand what had really happened. Her phone rang at 11:30 p.m. Hello? Silence. Then a voice she had never heard before. Calm, professional, deadly. "Miss Monroe, we know you have been keeping a diary." Her blood turned to ice. "We know about your conversations with the president. We know about your concerns. Who is this? Someone who wants to help you. Someone who wants to make sure you stay safe. What do you want?" "A meeting. Tomorrow night. Chasen's restaurant. 8 o'clock. Come alone. And if I don't, then you'll discover that diary writing can be a very dangerous hobby." The line went dead. Marilyn sat in her darkened kitchen holding the phone like a weapon that could not protect her. Outside, Los Angeles hummed with its usual late-night energy. But inside her house, she felt the walls closing in. She dialed a number from memory. "Pat, it's Marilyn. I need to see Jack. Now." In Chicago, Sam Giancana read intelligence reports that made his coffee taste like poison. The CIA was moving against everyone connected to the recording. Bank accounts frozen. Associates arrested on minor charges. Surveillance teams assigned to his own organization. But the most disturbing report came from his source inside the bureau. Bobby Kennedy had been asking questions about the August 12th operation. Questions that suggested he knew something had happened, but not what. "Boss." Tony Accardo entered the office carrying a briefcase. "We got problems. How big?" "The kind that end with everyone dead." Accardo opened the briefcase. Inside were copies of the original recording, but also something else. A reel-to-reel tape marked August 13th. Follow-up surveillance. There was more? The equipment kept running after Kennedy left. Picked up something we weren't supposed to hear. Giancana felt his stomach drop. "Play it." The tape crackled to life. Marilyn Monroe's voice talking on the phone, "Pat, I have to tell someone what Jack said about the military planning to kill him, about the attacks they want to stage." Then Patricia Lawford's voice panicked. "Marilyn, stop. Not on the phone. Never on the phone. But people need to know. The American people need to. They'll kill you if you talk. They'll kill Jack if you talk. They'll kill all of us." Giancana turned off the tape. The recording had captured not just Kennedy's confession, but evidence that the family knew about the conspiracy. Evidence that they were all living in fear. How many people have heard this? Just me. But boss, there's more. Accardo produced a manila folder containing surveillance photographs. Images of black sedans parked outside Giancana's restaurant. Men in suits watching his house. License plates traced to government motor pools. They're closing the net. On who? Everyone. You, me, the girl, maybe Kennedy himself. Giancana studied the photographs. In 40 years of criminal enterprise, he had learned to read the signs. These were not investigators building a case. These were executioners preparing for a cleanup operation. "Get me Murray Humphreys, and tell him to bring the emergency funds." How much emergency? All of it. That night, in a secure conference room beneath the Pentagon, 12 men gathered around a mahogany table to discuss the problem of President Kennedy. The meeting had no official agenda, no written records, no stenographer. General Curtis LeMay lit a cigar and studied files marked top secret, eyes only. The Chicago operation was compromised. Admiral George Anderson leaned forward. How compromised? Unknown. But we have to assume everything was recorded. Alan Dulles, recently dismissed as CIA director but still influential in certain circles, tapped his fingers on the table. What about the girl? Scheduled for neutralization tomorrow. And the mob connection also being addressed. Kennedy? LeMay took a long draw on his cigar. Dallas is still the best option. November, maximum publicity. Clear message. What kind of message? That presidents who interfere with national security interests tend to have short careers. The men around the table nodded in silent agreement. They had spent their lives serving American power, and they would not allow one idealistic politician to weaken that power with talk of peace and nuclear disarmament. Authorization? Already granted. Executive Action Committee. Final approval pending. Outside the Pentagon, Washington, D.C. slept peacefully. But inside the building, 12 patriots were planning to murder their own president to save him from himself. The next evening, Marilyn Monroe arrived at Chasen's restaurant wearing dark sunglasses and a headscarf that fooled no one. Every head in the restaurant turned as she was escorted to a corner booth where a man in his 50s waited with 2 untouched martinis. Miss Monroe, thank you for coming. Who are you? Someone who wants to keep you alive. He was average height, average weight, average everything. The kind of man who could disappear in a crowd or kill someone in broad daylight without being remembered. What do you want? Your cooperation. With what? The man opened a briefcase and removed a single sheet of paper, a typed statement confessing that Marilyn Monroe had fabricated stories about President Kennedy in order to gain attention and advance her career. Sign this. No. Sign this, and you get to continue your life, your career, your relationships. Everything goes back to normal. And if I don't? The man smiled without warmth. Then tomorrow's newspapers will report that Marilyn Monroe died of an accidental drug overdose. Very sad, very believable, very final. Marilyn stared at the document. Signing would save her life but destroy Jack's. Refusing to sign would kill her but might not save him anyway. How do I know you won't kill me after I sign? You don't, but signing gives you a chance. Refusing guarantees you die tonight. She picked up the pen. Her hand shook as she read the words that would brand her a liar and protect the men planning to murder the president. There's one more thing. What? The diary. We know you've been keeping records. Those records need to disappear. They already have. The man studied her face. Where? Somewhere you'll never find them. She was lying, but it was a convincing lie. The diary was still hidden in her dresser drawer. But if they believed she had already moved it, they might let her live long enough to actually hide it. Miss Monroe, lies can be very expensive. So can the truth. She signed the document and slid it across the table. The man read it carefully, then placed it back in his briefcase. A pleasure doing business with you. Will this really end it? That depends on how well you follow instructions. He stood up and left her sitting alone in the restaurant. Around her, Hollywood elite dined on expensive food and cheap gossip, unaware they had just witnessed the signing of a death warrant, because Marilyn Monroe had no intention of following instructions. That night, she drove to a bank in Beverly Hills and rented a safety deposit box. Inside, she placed her diary along with a letter addressed to the Attorney General of the United States. The letter began, "If you are reading this, I am already dead. But the truth about your brother and the conspiracy against him must not die with me." She sealed the envelope and gave instructions that it should be opened only in the event of her death. Then she went home to wait. Sam Giancana stared at the document that changed everything. A single sheet of CIA letterhead bearing an unsigned death warrant with his name on it. But the signature line revealed something that made his blood freeze. The authorization came from someone inside the Kennedy administration. "Where did you get this?" he asked Murray Humphreys, his most trusted lieutenant. "Our guy inside Langley took it from a burn bag before they could destroy it." The document was brief. Subject, Samuel Giancana. Threat level, critical. Executive action, authorized. Timeline, before September 15th. Operational note, cooperation between CIA and DOJ asset confirmed. DOJ asset. Department of Justice asset. Bobby Kennedy? Has to be. Who else would have that kind of access? Giancana read the document again, looking for any detail he might have missed, but the implications were clear. The CIA wanted him dead, and someone in Robert Kennedy's inner circle was helping them do it. But why would Bobby help them kill me? He's been trying to put me in prison, not in the ground. Humphreys lit a cigarette with shaking hands. Maybe prison was never the real plan. Maybe the whole prosecution was just cover for something bigger. Like what? Like making sure you were neutralized before you could use what you know. The pieces began falling into place. Bobby Kennedy's relentless prosecution of organized crime. The perfectly timed raids. The surveillance operations that always seemed to know exactly where to look. He's been working with them from the beginning. Gets worse, boss. Look at page 2. Giancana turned the page. A list of additional targets. Tony Accardo, Johnny Rosselli, Jimmy Hoffa, Carlos Marcello, and at the bottom, subject, Monroe, Marilyn. Status, cooperating. Disposition, terminate after utility expires. They're cleaning house. Everyone who knows anything about the Kennedy recording. Everyone who could expose the conspiracy. Giancana walked to his safe and removed the original tape. For 2 weeks, he had believed this recording was his insurance policy, evidence he could use to protect himself and his organization. Now he understood the truth. The recording was not insurance. It was a death sentence. They let us make this recording. What? Think about it. High-end surveillance equipment that we couldn't possibly afford. A perfectly timed presidential visit with no security detail. A conversation too dangerous for Kennedy to ever have with witnesses. Humphreys frowned. You're saying they wanted us to record it? I'm saying they needed us to record it. They needed evidence of Kennedy's disloyalty, his weakness, his willingness to betray national security interests. But why involve us? Because when they kill Kennedy, they can blame it on the mob. Organized crime angry about his brother's prosecutions. Perfect motivation. Perfect patsy. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Use the Chicago outfit to gather evidence against Kennedy, then eliminate the outfit to cover up the evidence. Kennedy dies. The mob takes the blame. The military-industrial complex gets its war. So what do? Giancana looked at the death warrant again. Someone in Bobby Kennedy's office had signed off on his execution, but that same office was also home to the one man who might be able to stop the conspiracy. We tell Bobby the truth. About what? About what his own people are planning to do to his brother. That afternoon, Robert Kennedy sat in his Justice Department office reviewing indictments that would destroy the Chicago outfit forever. Racketeering charges, tax evasion, murder, conspiracies. Enough evidence to put Sam Giancana away for life. But something felt wrong. The evidence was too perfect. The witnesses too cooperative. The timing too convenient. His secretary knocked. Mr. Kennedy? There's someone here to see you. I'm not taking meetings today. Sir, he says it's about your brother's safety. Bobby looked up sharply. Who? He wouldn't give his name. But he said to tell you he has information about Chicago surveillance operations. Bobby felt his stomach drop. If someone had been running surveillance on Jack, send him in, but have security standing by. The man who entered was not what Bobby expected. Mid-40s, expensive suit, calm demeanor. He looked more like a businessman than a criminal. Mr. Kennedy, thank you for seeing me. Who are you? My name is Murray Humphreys. I work for Sam Giancana. Bobby reached for his phone. Security. Mr. Kennedy, your brother is going to be murdered by your own people, and you're helping them do it. Bobby froze. What did you say? Humphreys placed a briefcase on the desk and opened it. Inside were copies of the CIA death warrant, surveillance photographs, and a portable tape recorder. We recorded a conversation between your brother and Marilyn Monroe. A conversation in which he revealed that elements of the U.S. military are planning to assassinate him. That's impossible. Is it? When was the last time your brother trusted you with classified information? When was the last time he asked your advice on national security matters? Bobby remained silent. He's been cut out of his own administration, isolated, surrounded by people who report to the Pentagon instead of to him. Humphreys pressed play on the tape recorder. John Kennedy's voice filled the office, broken and desperate. They're going to kill me, Marilyn, my own government. Bobby listened in horror as his brother described Operation Northwoods, the planned false flag attacks, the conspiracy to drag America into nuclear war. Where did you get this? We were hired to surveillance, Miss Monroe. We expected to record evidence of an affair. Instead, we recorded evidence of treason. Hired by who? People in your own department, people who wanted evidence against your brother. Humphreys produced the CIA routing slip showing Bobby's own letterhead. The authorization for Giancana's assassination bore the stamp of the Attorney General's office. Someone using your authority ordered this operation. Someone using your name authorized these killings. Bobby studied the documents. The letterhead was authentic. The classification markings were correct. But he had never seen these papers before. Who has access to my authorization codes? Someone close to you, someone you trust. Bobby's mind raced through the possibilities. His staff, his advisors, his security detail. Anyone could have used his authority without his knowledge. What do you want? To stay alive, and to keep your brother alive. In exchange for what? Nothing. Because if they kill Jack, they'll kill you next, and then they'll come for the rest of us. Humphreys closed the briefcase and stood up. Mr. Kennedy, you've been prosecuting the wrong criminals. What do you mean? The real criminals are the ones planning to murder the President of the United States, and some of them work in this building. After Humphreys left, Bobby sat alone in his office staring at copies of documents that proved his own department had been infiltrated. His own authority had been used to authorize murder. But the most terrifying realization was not that his enemies had betrayed him. It was that his friends had. Someone he trusted completely had been working with the CIA to kill his brother. Someone with access to his files, his codes, his most sensitive information. Someone sitting in meetings with him every day, planning Jack's funeral while pretending to protect his presidency. Bobby picked up his phone and dialed a number he had hoped never to use. This is Robert Kennedy. I need to speak with my brother immediately. I'm sorry, sir, but the president is in a classified briefing. Then get him out of it. I can't do that, sir. The briefing is with the Joint Chiefs. National security priority. Bobby hung up and stared out his window at the Washington skyline. Somewhere in this city his brother was sitting in a room with men planning to kill him, and Jack had no idea he was surrounded by enemies. The Secret Service stand-down order arrived at Bobby Kennedy's desk, marked Routine Administrative Update. But there was nothing routine about reducing the president's security detail by 40% for his upcoming Texas trip. Bobby studied the memorandum signed by Secret Service Director James Rowley. Official letterhead, proper classification markings, standard bureaucratic language that concealed its lethal purpose. Effective November 15th, Presidential Protection Detail will operate under Modified Security Protocol 7. Motorcade routes will prioritize public accessibility. Advanced teams will be reduced to essential personnel only. Modified Security Protocol 7. Bobby had never heard of it, but the implications were clear. They were stripping away Jack's protection and calling it policy. He reached for his phone, then stopped. If his own office was compromised, his phone calls were being monitored. His meetings were being recorded. His every move was being reported to the people planning his brother's death. Bobby walked to his safe and removed a .38 revolver he had carried since his days as a prosecutor in Boston. He had hoped never to use it in Washington. But Washington had become enemy territory. Across town, Marilyn Monroe sat in Dr. Ralph Greenson's office, trying to explain why she could no longer sleep without pills, could no longer eat without nausea, could no longer look at newspapers without seeing her own obituary. The nightmares are getting worse. Tell me about them. I'm in a car with Jack. We're driving through a city, but all the buildings are empty. No people on the streets, no sounds except our voices. And then I realize we're driving towards something terrible. Dr. Greenson made notes in a file that would disappear from his office 3 days later. What kind of terrible? The kind that kills presidents. Marilyn, these anxiety attacks are related to your dependency issues. If we can address the underlying... Doctor, what would you do if you knew someone was planning to murder the President of the United States? Greenson stopped writing. That's a very specific paranoid fantasy. What if it wasn't a fantasy? Then I would suggest you contact the appropriate authorities. What if the authorities are the ones planning the murder? Dr. Greenson closed his notebook. In 15 years of psychiatric practice, he had treated many Hollywood delusions. Actors who believed their own publicity. Directors who thought they could control reality. But Marilyn Monroe's fears felt different. They felt real. Marilyn, I'm going to prescribe a different medication, something to help with the paranoid thoughts. I don't need medication. I need protection. From who? From the people who killed the president in my dreams. That evening, Sam Giancana received a call that confirmed his worst fears. The voice belonged to Carlos Marcello, head of the New Orleans crime family and one of the most powerful mob bosses in America. "Sam, we need to talk." "About what?" "About the Kennedy problem. And about Dallas." Giancana felt his blood turn cold. Dallas was code for the assassination plot. If Marcello was calling about Dallas, it meant the conspiracy had reached the highest levels of organized crime. When? Tomorrow. Neutral ground. Come alone. The meeting took place in a hotel room in St. Louis. 3 men representing the most powerful crime families in America gathered to discuss whether they should save the president or help kill him. Marcello spoke first. "They want to use us as cover for the hit." Who's they? CIA, Pentagon. The same people who've been using our boys for their Cuban operations. Santo Trafficante Jr., head of the Tampa family, lit a cigar with hands that had ordered hundreds of deaths. "They're offering us a deal. Help with the Kennedy assassination, and the federal prosecutions disappear. And if we refuse, they frame us for it anyway." Giancana understood the trap. The government had manipulated them into recording Kennedy's confession. Now they could use that recording as evidence of mob anger against the president. Whether they participated or not, they would be blamed. What about Bobby? Bobby's been neutralized. His own staff is working against him. He doesn't even know what's happening in his own department. Marcello produced a manila folder containing surveillance photographs of the Kennedy brothers. Images of Jack meeting with military officials. Bobby arguing with CIA directors. Both men isolated within their own administration. The brothers don't trust each other anymore. Jack thinks Bobby is betraying his secrets. Bobby thinks Jack is making decisions without consulting him. Are they? Does it matter? They're both going to be dead by Christmas. In Los Angeles, Marilyn Monroe made a decision that would seal her fate. She drove to a payphone outside a Texaco station and dialed a number she had memorized but never used. Washington Post, City Desk. "I need to speak with a reporter. Someone who investigates government corruption. Hold, please." The voice that came on the line belonged to a young journalist who had been covering minor political scandals and dreaming of bigger stories. "This is Bob Woodward. Can I help you?" "I have information about a conspiracy to assassinate President Kennedy." Silence on the other end. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come in and speak with editors." "I can't do that, but I can tell you where to find evidence." "What kind of evidence?" Marilyn gave him the location of her safety deposit box and the key number. Instructions that would only make sense if she was dead. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because someone needs to know the truth, even if I'm not alive to tell it." She hung up before he could ask more questions. Across the country, a 28-year-old reporter wrote down details that would either make his career or end his life. But Bob Woodward would not understand the significance of that phone call for another 11 years. Back in Washington, Bobby Kennedy made a decision that would change everything. He walked out of his office carrying only his gun and a briefcase containing copies of every document proving the conspiracy against his brother. His security detail moved to follow him. "Stay here." "Sir, we have orders. Your orders are to protect me from external threats. Tonight, the biggest threat is internal." Bobby drove through the Washington night toward a meeting that would either save his brother or get them both killed. But he no longer cared about the risks. He cared about the truth, and about stopping the people who thought they could murder their way to peace. The White House loomed ahead like a fortress under siege. Inside, the President of the United States sat alone in the Oval Office, unaware that his own protection detail had been compromised, unaware that his brother was racing through the darkness to warn him, unaware that in 73 days he would be dead. Bobby Kennedy burst into the Oval Office without knocking. Jack sat behind the resolute desk reading intelligence briefings by lamplight, looking older than his 45 years. "We need to talk. Now." Jack looked up, startled. "Bobby, it's 3 in the morning. How did you get past? The Secret Service let me through. The question is, why are they still letting anyone through? Your security has been compromised." Bobby threw the briefcase onto the desk, spilling documents across the presidential seal. Surveillance photographs, death warrants, recordings, evidence of a conspiracy that reached into every corner of the federal government. "What is this?" "Proof that your own administration is planning to kill you." Jack picked up the Secret Service memorandum reducing his protection detail. His hands shook as he read the details of his own death sentence. This is impossible. Is it? When was the last time Curtis LeMay agreed with your foreign policy? When was the last time Alan Dulles supported your decisions? When was the last time your own advisors told you the truth about anything? Jack stood up and walked to the windows overlooking the rose garden. Outside, Secret Service agents maintained their posts, but which ones were protecting him and which ones were waiting for orders to step aside? How long have you known? 3 days. Maybe longer. The Chicago outfit recorded your conversation with Marilyn Monroe. They brought me the evidence because someone in my own department authorized their assassination. Jack turned back to his brother. You know about Marilyn? I know about everything. The recording, the blackmail, the fact that you told her about Operation Northwoods. I had to tell someone. I couldn't carry it alone anymore. And now they're going to kill her to keep her quiet. The brothers stared at each other across a distance that had nothing to do with physical space. Between them lay decades of shared ambition, mutual protection, and unwavering loyalty. But tonight, that loyalty might not be enough to save either of them. What do you want me to do? Bobby pulled a .38 revolver from his jacket and placed it on the desk. Fight back. Against who? Half my administration? The Joint Chiefs? The CIA? Against whoever is planning to murder the President of the United States. And if we're wrong? If this is all paranoid speculation? Then we'll look foolish. If we're right, we'll be dead. At that moment, Marilyn Monroe's phone rang for the last time. She had been expecting the call. For 3 weeks, she had lived with the certainty that her death was only a matter of timing. The men who had forced her to sign the false confession would not let her live to recant it. Hello? Miss Monroe, you have something that belongs to us. I don't know what you mean. The diary, the letters, the insurance policy you think will protect you. Marilyn looked toward her bedroom, where the diary lay hidden, but she had already moved the real evidence to the safety deposit box. The diary they would find was a decoy. Even if you kill me, the truth will come out. No, Miss Monroe. The truth is whatever we say it is. The line went dead. Marilyn walked to her medicine cabinet and removed the bottle of Nembutal, 30 pills. Enough to kill her twice over. But she had no intention of taking them. She had no intention of making their job easy. 20 minutes later, 3 men entered through her unlocked front door. They moved through her house like surgeons, professional and efficient. One man held her down while another forced pills down her throat. The third man arranged the scene, suicide by overdose, another Hollywood tragedy, another unstable actress who could not handle fame. But as consciousness faded, Marilyn managed one final act of defiance. She triggered a recording device hidden beneath her bed, capturing the voices of her killers for posterity. Make sure it looks accidental. What about the diary? Leave it. Let them find it. The suicide story will discredit anything she wrote. And if there are other copies? There won't be. We've been monitoring her for weeks. The recording device captured 23 minutes of conversation, details about the Kennedy assassination, names of conspirators, locations of safe houses, everything needed to expose the conspiracy. Everything except the knowledge that anyone was listening. In the White House, Bobby Kennedy received a phone call that confirmed their worst fears. Mr. Kennedy, this is the Los Angeles Police Department. We're sorry to inform you that Miss Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her home tonight. Bobby looked at his brother, who had gone white as paper. Cause of death? Apparent suicide by drug overdose. We're very sorry for your loss. Bobby hung up and turned to Jack. She's dead. How? Officially? Suicide. Unofficially, they killed her to silence her. Jack collapsed into his chair. The woman he had loved, the woman who had listened to his fears and carried his secrets, was dead because he had trusted her with the truth. It's my fault. No, it's their fault, and we're going to make them pay for it. Bobby gathered the evidence spread across the presidential desk. We have enough here to expose the whole conspiracy. Congressional hearings, criminal prosecutions, public trials. And if they kill us before we can use it, then at least we die fighting back. Jack picked up his brother's gun and checked the ammunition. 6 bullets. Not enough to fight a war, but enough to make a statement. What do you need me to do? Cancel the Texas trip. I can't do that. It would look like weakness. Better to look weak than to be dead. Bobby, if I cancel Dallas, they'll just find another city, another opportunity. Running won't save us. Then what will? Jack opened the drawer of the Resolute desk and removed a secure phone that connected directly to the Pentagon. But instead of calling his military advisors, he dialed a different number. "Get me Sam Giancana. Tell him the President of the United States wants to make a deal." Outside the Oval Office, Washington slept peacefully. But inside, two brothers were preparing for a war that would determine whether America remained a democracy or became something else entirely. The recording of Marilyn Monroe's final phone call would never be found, but the truth she died protecting was about to become a weapon. November 22, 1963, Dallas, Texas. Sam Giancana sat in his Chicago office watching television coverage of the presidential motorcade. The black Lincoln convertible moved slowly through Dealey Plaza while thousands of spectators cheered and waved flags. For 14 months, he had carried the weight of terrible knowledge, the recording of Kennedy's confession, the evidence of conspiracy, the certainty that this day would come. But knowing death was coming did not make it easier to watch. At 12:30 p.m. Central Time, the shots rang out across Dealey Plaza. 3 bullets that changed the course of American history. On television screens across the nation, Walter Cronkite removed his glasses and struggled to find words for the unthinkable. President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Giancana turned off the television and walked to his safe. Inside, beneath stacks of cash and insurance policies, lay a metal box containing the most dangerous recording in American political history. The conversation between John Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe, proof that the president had known of the conspiracy against him. Evidence that could expose the real killers and vindicate the dead. But evidence was only valuable if someone was alive to use it. Bobby Kennedy had died 3 minutes after his brother, gunned down by his own security detail as he tried to board Air Force One. The official story blamed a lone gunman whose communist sympathies made him hate the Kennedy family. The truth was simpler. Dead presidents could not expose conspiracies. Giancana picked up the recording and held it to the light. Magnetic tape containing voices that would never speak again, secrets that would never be officially revealed. But secrets had a way of surviving, even when the people who knew them did not. He placed the recording in a manila envelope addressed to a young reporter in Washington. Bob Woodward had been asking questions about Marilyn Monroe's death, questions that suggested he might be ready to hear answers. On the envelope, Giancana wrote, "The truth about Dallas. Listen carefully. Trust no one in government." He sealed the package and gave it to Johnny Rosselli with instructions to mail it from a post office in Detroit. By the time it reached Washington, Giancana would be dead. The Chicago outfit boss had served his purpose. The patsy had played his role. Now the cleanup could begin. 3 days later, Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald in a Dallas police station, ensuring the alleged assassin would never stand trial. Ruby claimed he killed Oswald to spare Jackie Kennedy the pain of a lengthy legal proceeding. The real reason was simpler. Dead men could not confess to crimes they did not commit. On December 15, 1963, Sam Giancana was found shot to death in his Oak Park home. The Chicago police blamed rival crime families fighting over territory. The truth was that America no longer needed witnesses to its shame. In a safety deposit box in Beverly Hills, Marilyn Monroe's diary waited to be discovered. Pages filled with intimate conversations about government conspiracies and presidential fears. Evidence that a beautiful actress had died because she knew too much about ugly truths. The box would remain sealed for 57 years. In the National Archives, a new file appeared in the classified section. Box number 1847, labeled Monroe Files, classification level unknown. Inside were photographs, documents, and recordings that would never be released to the public. Evidence of a democracy that had killed its own leaders to save itself from peace. The file would be declassified in 2039, when everyone who remembered the truth was safely dead. But truth has a way of surviving, even in the darkness. In 1974, a young reporter named Bob Woodward received a package containing magnetic tape and documents about presidential conspiracies. By then, he was investigating a different scandal involving a different president. Watergate seemed more important than ancient history. The Kennedy recording was filed away, forgotten until another time, when America might be ready to confront the reality that some of its greatest leaders had been murdered by its most trusted institutions. That day has not yet come. But somewhere in the shadows of American power, the tape still exists. Voices from 1962 speaking truth to a nation that preferred comfortable lies to uncomfortable reality. The recording waits, like justice itself, for the moment when secrets finally demand to be heard. And when that moment comes, the voice of John Kennedy will speak from beyond the grave, warning America about the enemies within its own government, the enemies who killed him for choosing peace over war, the enemies who are still waiting in the shadows, planning the next assassination, the next conspiracy, the next betrayal of everything America once promised to be.